Hello! How's it going? Hope everyone's well and everyone's being treated well. I recorded a bunch of geek word stuff today, and I'll be editing those and so that they can be put up throughout the week without me having to worry too much. So that's the plan, anyway. Now, I was thinking about some gaming stuff. I have been working sort of in the background of my head on background stuff for the novel I've been sort of poking at for a while now. It's a fantasy world. And it's interesting because I'm taking characters that were essentially created for a different world and trying to convert them to another world, and part of that process is making a world where they make sense. And I started thinking about, world rules, what rules I will and will not break in the story. I have a magic system, which is actually vaguely akin to the old Marvel Universe magic system, which, I'm not sure how I would implement that if I were trying to put it as a game, but the cosmology of it's pretty simple. You have personal magic, which draws on your own personal energy. Universal magic, where you're calling on basically universal magical laws. And source magic, where you're pulling on a source. And usually all the sources have personalities involved, so sometimes that can be a problem, depending on the source of the magic. Clerics in this world, the priests, those who, in, let us say, D&D terms, divine spellcasters, although I'm not really down with it calling it that in this particular world, but the guys who have a priesthood and a church and everything, they have access to a magic, but it's the same magic that the mages use. It's just they are calling on a source that they happen to believe is their god. Whereas mages are calling on various sources and have no illusions about them being their god. That's one of the rules. Another one of the rules I decided that I was going to make in this world is one I've seen implemented in plenty of LARPs, one that I agree with wholeheartedly, but I didn't understand it the first time I heard it. The first time I heard it, I was like, that doesn't make sense. The rule is, there's no rape. The thing with that is, yes, you could conceive of the world as, rape happens in the real world. You want your world to be realistic, therefore it must happen in a realistic world. I'm willing to accept the notion that somewhere in that world, off camera, that no one will ever talk about, nor will I ever show, it's possible, if it were a realistic world, that rape probably happens somewhere. I'm not going to show it. I'm not going to bring it up. I'm going to avoid it at all costs. Because, one, the game is supposed to be fun. And while you can make certain powerful points about violence against women, or the inequity of our culture, or any number of things, with that as a story element, it's a story element that gets gone to way too often in fiction and media. And I don't want it in that world. I don't want to deal with it. I'm writing a book that's supposed to be a fun book, and I can find better ways to make someone feel threatened than to pull that one out of the tricks bag. So if I ever write a book about how violence is done to women, I might use that as a story element. Till then, I'm probably going to never need it. There are so many other ways that you can provide threat. I get that it's shorthand for this is the most terrible thing that we could think of to do to a female character. It's almost never done to male characters, but, you know, every once in a while, even those. And I get that there's an emotional power behind that, but I don't want to deal with it. It's not going to be part of my story. It's not going to be part of my game worlds. And in the first time I ran into it at a LARP, I heard it and I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. It's a realistic world. It has to have happened somewhere. And me and a friend joked about, you know, that apparently biologically women are different on those worlds, any number of things. And then years later, I got it. Years later, I was like, oh yeah, we're trying to have fun. It's a meta rule in that, you know, there's no, like, universal rule. There's no, like, metaphysical reason in the universe why this doesn't work. The people involved running the game just didn't want to deal with it. They didn't want their players to deal with it. They didn't want to have to, you know, tell people, listen, you might not want to go on this one because you have a history that involves somebody having committed sexual violence against you or a member of your family or a friend. So, every LARP I've ever played has said, nope, that doesn't happen in our world. And so, considering that the two characters in this story actually originated as LARP characters, actually 3 characters originated as LARP characters, I'm going to say same rule. Doesn't happen. I get that games can be used to talk about uncomfortable stuff. It can. And I've played in games where you talked about uncomfortable stuff. But you have to go in with that understanding. Yeah, that has to be part of your understanding going in. I'm going to be made uncomfortable. There's going to be uncomfortable things involved here. If I read, you know, the series, what was it? The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest, A Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, that series. You go in knowing that it's going to be unpleasant in a lot of places. There's a good story there, and part of the point is that it's about violence against women and how cultures just sort of look away from it. But you go in knowing that. If I'm writing a fantasy novel with, you know, sort of an epic fantasy theme to it and, you know, high adventure, I'm not going in with that assumption. If I'm reading it, I'm not going in with that assumption. I can see how that was, pardon me, part of the problem with some people on Game of Thrones. They went into it thinking it was another epic fantasy. It's not. It is about as unpleasant an experience for every character in that story as you could imagine. And it's part of what you sign up for when you go into it. And if you haven't got that understanding going in, it can be really disconcerting. It can make you angry. You know, I mean, you thought you were mad at the red wedding or the bit with the dad and the chop. You know, all of that stuff made you angry. There's stuff in that series that is just awful. People do awful things to each other in that series. And if you don't know that going in, you're going to hate that series. But, you know, I don't want to write that book. I think George R. R. Martin's awesome. I like the books, but I don't want to write that book. I want to write a different book. I want to write a book with, you know, a little more high adventure, a little more fun. I don't want people to have to, cringe every time they turn around that, not just characters can die. Yeah, I don't mind characters dying if it, serves the purpose of the plot. But, I just want to take some of the terrible off the table. That's why I'm at. Now, to wrap this up, because I'm going a little long, I've been, like I said, I've been dealing with some world building stuff, and I may write up some of my world building ideas. I don't know if I will share them, because I think it would make an interesting game world. The characters, the gravediggers in the story, both started as characters at a LARP. One by me and one by a friend of mine. And there's another character that is certainly inspired by another LARP character. And there'll probably be a few others sprinkled throughout. And so a game world was definitely in mind when they were come up with. So I'm trying to create a world that could easily be a game world because the characters have to make sense in it. So, maybe people would be interested in it. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I will be back with more stuff later. Love you guys. Subscribe, like, share with all the people, and please don't hate me.